while work should be a professional environment, like we should still be able to show up as our true selves um, and not necessarily hide.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello, this is Cynthia Chaplin, and today I am so excited to welcome Terah Bajjalieh to Voices. Terah graduated with a degree in finance, but she traded it in to become a winemaker, thank goodness, a consultant, and a certified somm after she took a 3-month wine program sort of just for fun. So since then, she's been working in wineries in 5 different countries. And in 2020, she founded Terah Wine Company in the Bay Area of California, focusing on minimal intervention winemaking, which is a big point of interest for me. So we'll come back to that. In 2024, she was invited to pour her wines at a private reception hosted by the U.S. Department of State in D.C. in honor of Arab American Heritage Month, which is super cool. You were recognized also for her outstanding contributions as a rising star in the wine industry, an independent winemaker committed to sustainable winemaking, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right up my street. And she is also the Mentee Liaison Officer at Batonnage, and she was named to Wine Enthusiast Future 40. So a huge resume for somebody who's so young. So really fun to talk to you. Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the amazing introduction.
No, big pleasure. I mean, you've accomplished so much in the wine world since you gave up finance 20 years ago. Let's talk about that for half a minute. What happened there? You had a finance degree. What took you into wine? How did your family react to this massive change that it's not a very similar time?
For sure. It was a really massive change. I didn't work very long in finance. I spent about a year trading commodities at a brokerage in the South Bay, and then got back into mortgage lending for a very short period of time. But when I graduated, it was the start of the huge mortgage crisis that existed back in 2008. And so it was a tough time in finance, or real estate for that matter, which were two of the main areas of focus for me. So I just found it a little challenging to kind of kickstart my career in finance. And at the end of the day, I had this lingering interest to travel the world and spend some time abroad. And I did a little bit of that in college, but I don't think I really scratched that itch fully. And I had this passion and this interest in culture and studying food. And so that led me into looking at possibly attending a culinary program in France. I started touring a couple of colleges, and I stumbled upon this sommelier program and decided just to do it for fun. I was really at a point where I was open to just kind of exploring and seeing if there was something else that may interest me. And I absolutely fell in love with wine and took the certified exam in 2010, and that was it. I kind of went down the wine rabbit hole.
I love that story. I think a lot of us in wine fell down the wine rabbit hole in one way or another. I don't know that many people who sort of set off to do wine at the beginning, so including myself. So it's nice to hear.
Yeah.
We're in those days when everybody's talking about, young people under the age of, 45, nobody's drinking wine anymore. So I love hearing that you fell into it that way and became passionate about it that way.
For sure. I don't think it was really the drinking that got me. It was more the education and this constant pursuit of learning more, exploring. It was like I loved studying wine. I don't think I enjoyed studying finance, or I know I didn't enjoy studying finance as much as I enjoyed studying wine. It's like this endless pursuit, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was hooked.
That's so great. I completely agree. I love the whole culture, history, legends, myths, everything that goes along with wine. Yet finance doesn't have that. It has other things, but it definitely doesn't have that. So
Yeah.
you did all this traveling, to learn about wine. You were working harvests and, as a cellar hand all over the world in some super, well-known winemaking regions. And it's interesting because you said it wasn't always easy, even in, recent years. We're only talking back, not even 20 years.
Yeah.
And you said that you shared that you were gay and you were working in Australia and you got immediately pulled out of the lab because the person you were working with was uncomfortable with that. So not long ago, you were asked about your ethnicity in a job interview, which happens all the time in Italy. It's illegal in the U.S., but it still
Yeah.
happens. Um, and the person who was interviewing you had a lot of misperceptions about your Palestinian heritage. So this is one of these moments where it's so interesting to hear that this is happening. It makes me feel actually really sad and sort of sick to my stomach. I'm a lot older than you, and I thought we were way past this, but we're not.
Yeah.
So you're here, you're strong, you've got your own company now. But how did those experiences affect you at the time when you were just starting out?
Yeah, they were really impactful. I mean, to begin with, I was never really, you know, coming out and being gay was a process. It took many years for me to get comfortable with it, especially um, with my cultural background. It was a tough thing to um, get comfortable with, and the wine world is tough. It's not very diverse. It's hard for women in general, let alone all these other things that made me unique. And so I was never really open about a lot of things unless I felt absolutely safe. And that those because I was focused on my career and I just really wanted to grow and excel. And you when you were working harvest, you have a couple months with people at the very most, and that's when you really have to prove yourself in order to land a full-time position. And these experiences were to learn hands-on, but I was also considering trying to find a place that I can permanently settle down with. So that was always the intention and the idea with these experiences. And so, um, it can be really difficult to just be open about who you are personally. And so I generally was not open about that, and just tried to navigate things professionally and kept my personal life very much private, including here in the U.S., especially around being Palestinian. But in Australia, I felt compelled to just open up and just try to make friends with this woman who I was going to be working with for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and it ended up biting me in the. It ended up biting me, but at the end, it was tough because I paid all this money to travel to Australia. It's a huge investment. I was already there. And in the end, I had some really great friends, one from Chile and this other guy from South Africa, that ended up supporting me and really just kind of helping me through the situation. And all the people in the cellar were great and amazing to work with and supportive, but it really takes a toll on you internally when you have to kind of retract in that way, when it takes a lot of guts to share something personal about yourself, and then management supports that sort of behavior. I was compelled to just leave altogether, but I ended up just staying. Yeah, those situations just, yeah, I mean, they're really impactful, and sometimes it can take years to get through them, and to get back to a place where you feel comfortable to be yourself and to share those things with people. And while work is should be a professional environment, like, we should still be able to show up as our true selves, um, and not necessarily hide those things. But it's still a process, and the world is still working through these things, unfortunately. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to, when asked about these private things, to share them, because I think visibility is really important. And change isn't going to take place if we're not open about these things and these challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was so much part of why I wanted to talk to you, aside from, everything that you're doing in your career, which we'll get to because it's very cool. It, I think people have a very skewed perception of a career in the wine industry. And they think it's all, glamorous and, either in beautiful vineyards or in beautiful wine tasting rooms.
and they don't realize, as you said, the cost of learning is very high in the wine industry, whether you're taking courses or whether you're taking yourself to often unpaid internships, in far-flung places, and then to have, sort of a very personal, um, not an attack, but just a very personal sort of situation to deal with in what is your workplace. I don't think people realize how much part that is of the wine industry, and it's something that, I'm so glad that you're brave enough and strong enough to talk about everything that you've been through and how you've obviously mastered a lot of it, because I think other people need to hear these stories. The wine industry is tough, as you said, for women, for people of color, for LGBTQ, and it doesn't seem to have the same rules as some other industries. So I'm glad that you made it through. I'm sorry that you had those experiences, but it's great that you're lifting up a voice to talk about it. So
Thank you.
um, yeah, it's interesting. You've said you embrace these labels instead of rejecting them, and I think that's really refreshing, because labels are never great, but we work in a place where people are trying to figure out who everybody is, and and label not only wines and grapes but also people in the industry. So you know your awareness and your idea about labels is interesting. Tell us a little bit about how you've gotten, as you said, you got comfortable with it.
I mean, I'm relatively comfortable with it. I'm not going to lie; it's still a process. I still am working through these things. I still walk into rooms and situations where I don't always feel like I can be my true self, and that's a real thing. And I say that because being open about these things isn't always easy, and it's still challenging for me. But the press and people that I've had the opportunity to speak with, like yourself, have chosen to highlight it, and I figure there's no better way to really shine light on that is by just being honest about it. In terms of labels, I mean, I think sometimes we as people just feel the need to categorize things and to define things, whether, like you said, they're wines or varietals. And I think it's a start of a conversation. Um, well, I certainly don't want to be put in a box, and I want to be known for my wines and the commitment that I've given to this industry. It's been, um, 15 years of working in this industry and relentlessly pursuing education and stuff. And I'd rather be known for that pursuit and that effort, and the quality of my wines, rather than being labeled. But I think the labels is how you start a conversation. So if that's where we're at, that's okay. I hope we can get to a point where we don't feel the need to define and categorize people in boxes in such a way.
I agree. I completely agree. I hope that this is going to be a thing of the past by the time we're looking back on this in a few years. It's interesting what you said about getting education, and you're an educator yourself. I am as well. And you've been, doing wine teaching and stuff in the Bay Area for a little while before you started producing wine. So let's talk about wine education for a minute, because I think um, in terms of what we've been talking about so far, a lot of people feel excluded from wine education. It can be very exclusive and feel snobby, unaccepting, inaccessible. So I try hard through this podcast and other ways to use language to be welcoming, to be accepting, to make a safe space. What would you like to see happen in wine education in the future to, sort of make it more meaningful, more joyful, to make people feel more accepted and not have to, as you said, you still have your own internal battles with things. I'd like to find a place in wine which should be joyful and open to bring people in and educate them. What would you like to see happen in wine education? It's really not always the most welcoming.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, our industry isn't always welcoming, and I think maybe that's the challenge we're having now. I know that traditional education and a lot of these programs have gotten a lot of bad rap over the years, recently, but I do think it's, as a person who entered in the industry who didn't know anything about wine, having some sort of structure was really helpful to me. I learned a tremendous amount in a very short period of time, and that was impactful and empowering. And while not everyone could afford those types of classes, I think being able to really expedite and have curriculum organized is super important. Um, and I'm not saying we should throw that out completely. Maybe we need to get a more diverse group of people involved in these programs and educating themselves. I think just having visibility again through these programs would be really beneficial. I think we should maybe do more consumer outreach and education and make it fun for the younger generation. We should maybe incorporate them into how we talk about wine and get some ideas from them, and just make it more open altogether.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think getting actual input from people who are looking at the wine industry is maybe something they'd like to do, and they're feeling held back for whatever reason. I think that's a great sort of demographic to tap into for some ideas about how to improve what we're doing. So I like that. I think that's the way to go, is to talk to people who feel like they can't open the door and figure out how we can do it for them. So let's talk about your wines for a minute here, because I'm really interested. Eric Asimov has commended your wines, wine enthusiast. I called you a young winemaker with an exciting take on old vineyards. I work for Old Vine Conference, so I'm interested in this. And you're a native Californian. You've got a very international perspective. And just wanting to hear what you're doing, what grapes are you using. You've got organic farming. I know you're really committed to that. You're integrating animals, you're pushing boundaries. Tell us a little bit about the wines you're making and why you think low intervention is so crucial. I agree with you, but I want to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, thanks for asking me about this. Um, that was a lot to kind of go through, but my experience working as an intern took me all over the world, and it really helped me look at things with a really open mind. I worked in so many different climates with lots of varietals. While most of my experience was focused on Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, um, the aspect of just being abroad and constantly immersing myself in a new system and a new culture really taught me to look at things with a really wide lens. And I spent time working in Sonoma and Napa mostly, but when it was time to start my project, I think I had to look at things with that wide lens. I had to be super flexible. I did not have grower relationships. I did not have millions of dollars to fund this project. And this is a seriously bootstrapped project. I started it with my own savings and have been growing little by little ever since. So I had to be extremely flexible in terms of which varieties I would be making. And I realized early on that I think what was more important was my grower relationships, and feeling and connecting with people that I could trust to farm well, farm the way I wanted, and take utmost care of that fruit, because that was going to allow me to make the best wine that I could.
And I think not a lot of people understand how this works, because your company is Terah Wines, but you don't have a vineyard. So your relationships with your growers that you're talking about is super important to the end result. So how are you getting them on board with what you want to do organically, bioorganically, all these different aspects of being low intervention?
Well, I actually just I thankfully did not have to get them on board to farm this way. They were already farming that way. And I just chose to align myself with people who already wholeheartedly believed in organics, regenerative farming, and biodynamics. And I found that I didn't have to talk them into taking better care of their soils and taking better care of their vineyard, so that these vines would last post 20, 30 years. They already had that mindset. And so there was already that alignment. I didn't really have time to try to work with growers in a sense that to try to get them on board with that. There was really no, I needed to build those relationships quickly so that I can make wine. And so I just chose to seek people out like that.
So what are you making? What are you growing? What grapes are you buying? What wines are you making?
Yeah, from the Central Coast, I work with Syrah, Grenache, Pinot Noir. There's an amazing regenerative ranch called Piscinus Ranch Vineyard that has quite a wide range of varietals. I'm making Verdejo. Just recently started working with Assertico from that vineyard. They also have Syrah and Grenache, and then from Lodi, I work with Vermentino, Sangiovese. There's a vineyard in just outside of Lodi in Clarksburg that farms Falangina, and that is turned into a cool orange wine. And then one of my favorite vineyards in the Sierra foothills, I buy Barbera from Shake Ridge Ranch Vineyard.
Fantastic! So many Italian
I
natives.
know.
This is really cool. I go to LA occasionally to judge LA Wine International, and I judge Italian grapes grown outside of
Oh,
Italy.
cool.
So it's very cool to hear more grapes are moving from Italy. You know, climate change has a lot to do with all these things, of
Absolutely.
course, as we know. So how many wines are you making in total?
It ebbs and flows every year. There's always a little bit of experimentation and really small lots that I'll do, but generally speaking, I'm doing about 10 different SKUs.
And how many bottles a year?
At this point, I'm producing 1,800 cases of wine.
Right. Right.
So that would be, let's see, 21,600 bottles.
That's great. I mean, it's been a really short time. It's only been a couple of years.
Yes,
So,
I've been
so what's
hustling.
the goal? What's the next step?
The next step is to try to expand my national distribution network here in the U.S. That's imperative to being able to scale. I would love to export wine. I'm actually heading to Japan in a week to participate in the California wine export program. Um, so my Barbera from Shake Ridge is going to be highlighted in a master class taught by Elaine Brown. So I'm
Oh, great
Yes,
person.
I know.
Fantastic.
I'm really honored to be a part of it. It's super exciting, and I'm hoping to connect with an importer on that trip. So I will be,
Fantastic.
focusing on a select few export markets. Obviously, my production is still really small, but building those relationships that are a good fit, I think, is important in my expansion.
It's a really interesting story, and we wish you all the best with it. Before I let you go, I've got to talk about your role at Batonnage. Batonnage is a group that I'm very fond of and have been for years. They describe themselves as a brainchild of all those who identify as women working in different facets of the wine industry. Particularly people who've been traditionally left out of the wine industry. So this is very near and dear my heart, and you're the mentee liaison officer. I'm a mentor as well for a group called Curious Vines in London. So I mentoring women in the wine industry is something that I think is really important and doesn't have enough spotlight thrown on it. So we can all agree there's been a lot of issues about being a woman in the wine industry. And as you said, different cultures, different ethnic heritage, all sorts of things can complicate the fact of just being a woman to start with. So let's talk about the mentorship program and how you're leading it. What is Batonnage mentorship program doing to support people in similar situations? It's a great program. There's a lot going on. So how did you get to be the liaison officer, and what are you doing? What's happening?
Yeah, I actually participated as a mentee back in 2021. I was just launching my business and I was based in the Central Coast. It was a little tough to network with women in wine, so I decided to join as a mentee. And at the time, they kept it totally unlimited, so I got to connect with countless mentors, and absolutely took advantage of that program. And they kind of commended me on how many sessions I booked and how many mentors I connected with. I understood the value of it, and I filled my schedule to the max, um, and tried to connect with as many people as I could. And I think they understood that it had a really huge impact on me. I offered my time after because benefited from it very much. And I've always mentored women. I've always had an open door policy, but having an organization to just kind of tap into and offer your time made it easier to do so rather than having to create a formal program. So in 2022, they offered me this role really as a way to tell women to like take total advantage of it and share my experience. Initially, it was more of a matter of just like sharing my experience in 2021 and helping guide them through the program since I had just gone through it. And that's how it started. And I helped with a lot of the back end administration with just emailing and making sure the communication was being met between mentor and mentee. And then helping with recruiting along the way. Because I sell my own wine, I'm really active in the marketplace, and I'm always meeting new people. So I've referred a lot of people to the program that way.
It's so awesome. It was a very interesting program too. I know there are 3 progressive levels of mentorship across 7 industry areas of focus, and then there's a feedback afterwards. So how can people reach out? How can they get in touch with you? How can they get involved? Unless they meet you personally, anyone who's listening, how can they get in touch with Batonnage and get in touch with the mentorship program?
Well, there's times of the year when the applications are open. So I would say head to the Batonnage website and check out the dates for all the programs. Sign up for the newsletter on their website. And that way you can get your application in when those moments open. You're always welcome to reach out to me directly on Instagram or by emailing me through my personal website. My contact information is on my website. You're always welcome to reach out and just ask questions about the program, and I'll funnel you through to the appropriate departments. I do want to say that the program is mostly led by volunteers, and we don't have many paid positions within the organization. So sponsorship and fundraising is really important. And I just wanted to clarify that we're pretty much all volunteer led. So just keep that in mind when you reach out.
And I think it's such a touchstone in women's mentorship in wine. Most of it is all volunteer. I know mine is as well. So and I know, you're a busy person. You've got your own company. You're, as you said, you're out there hustling. You're trying to sell your wine and make your wine, and you're giving your time to do this for young women and women who are new to the business. So I think that's so valuable, and I don't think people talk about how important it is. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. And I know that, the simplest conversation that you have with somebody has a much more lasting effect than I think you ever realize it at the time when you're having the conversation. So
for sure.
Being involved in something like that is great. And I want to wish you all the luck for Japan. I will be keeping my eye. Let me know when you're exporting to Europe so I can find you. But I'll definitely got to come and see you when I'm back in California next. I'm really grateful, Terah, for having you today and hearing so much positivity. It's late at night for me here, so it's nice to end the day on a positive note with somebody who has such an amazingly, bright outlook on our industry. Thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I will see you in Italy for sure.
Yay. Great. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.